COVID had to happen. live stream starts? Okay, thank you. So interesting. Oh, we go. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to join us today, for taking time out of your afternoon. Um, Firstly, just a big thank you to the venue for having us here, giving us nibbles and free drinks, which is always really good. And a big thank you to GradLink for pulling this together. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to make these sort of things happen. We think we turn up and it's easy, but there's a lot of, that graceful swan on top of the lake, but really frantically underneath. There's so much going on. So thank you to Priya and her team for that. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Mike Perk. I am an entrepreneur. I own a number of different businesses, from the transport tech space to the engineering space, but the majority of my time is actually spent in the people and culture space. So I spend most of my time consulting to organizations on organizational culture, and that's why today's subject fascinates me so much, and I'm really, really interested to find out more as we talk about cultivating employability. But before we go on, I just want to introduce you to our illustrious panel, our 5 amazing people here today. Maybe, Sonika, if I can start with you. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds just to give us the brief lowdown.
Thank you, Mike. I'm Sonika Gerber, and I'm from Fluidity Software Solutions. I head up operations and project management, and we're a software development company. I am passionate about people and growth and technology, and always remind people that developers are people too, even though they speak a different language.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Davids. I'm the director at the Center for Student Counseling and Development here at Stellenbosch University. I run a private practice, and I'm opening a psychiatric clinic soon, so I go through different kind of things, and I do a lot of work in the sports psychology field as well.
Depending on how the questions come from the audience, we might need to come to your practice after this session.
Well, I'm not charging tonight, so no.
Fantastic.
I'm Vandiswa. I am a postgraduate student at the moment. I'm studying environmental management. I did my undergraduate in international relations, so naturally I'm passionate about people, passionate about politics as well, which is people in general, and yeah, just learning at the moment, still very, very young, so stepping into that adult world for sure.
Trust me, the older you get, the more you realize you have to learn. So it's an ongoing journey.
Hi everyone. My name is Kanti. My second name is Mokota. I'm in the undergrad, my final year international relations, and I'm passionate about everything, and I mean everything. I think once my mind and my heart is sent out to something, I'm definitely going to do it. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rian Stimberg, and people ask me what I do, so I tell them I own universities. I'm the director of NetEd Group, and I'm an executive director at Agivos. And yeah, I take care of about 16,000 students on a daily basis in some way or form. So get to deal with a lot of the cultural issues as people are entering the workplace. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Rian. Okay, so I work with a lot of different organizations in different industries, and have done for many years, particularly in the culture space. And I hear common complaints coming through, and they're quite consistent, around graduates entering the workplace from those companies. So things such as lack of practical skills, poor communication skills, lack of professionalism, how you turn up, how you show up, the difficulty in adapting to that workplace culture, to the office politics, and the big one that always comes up is unrealistic expectations. So around what the role is, what I'm doing there, career progression, salary. Now, on the flip side, I also, during a lot of these culture surveys that have to take place, talk to a lot of grads that have just entered the workplace, and they have equally as many complaints about the company that they're in. So there's a lack of career path, poor work-life balance, unengaging work, often more menial tasks than what we've studied or what we thought we were getting into. You know, that purpose that was sold to me, actually, it doesn't really exist when you lift the lid off and you get working in here. And then sort of inadequate compensation. And if you want me to grow, I'm getting limited feedback. You're not recognizing what I do. So there's impact on both sides, okay? So from an employee's perspective, there's a lot of dissatisfaction. It can lead to lower self-esteem in the workplace. Even mental health issues come up. And from a business perspective, you've got the high turnover, which leads to high costs, not just in terms of money, but also in time. So ultimately, there is this misalignment that needs to be solved. You know, and the big question is, how do you fill that gap, and whose responsibility is it? Is it the graduate's responsibility to adapt to the culture within the organization? Or is it the organization's responsibility to adapt their culture, their practices, their ways of working to better integrate and bring in the graduates? And then what is academia's role in helping to bridge that gap in that misalignment? Whew, there's a big gap. How do we fill it? But we have the people here tonight that are going to answer that question so we can all leave and everything's solved and we never have this problem again. That easy. No pressure, guys. Okay, so let's start off with, and look, I'm going to make sure that we have enough time to let the audience ask questions as well tonight. But we're going to kick off first with just trying to get a bit of wisdom from the crowd here around that subject. So Sonika, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. Now, you're responsible for the operations in a successful tech business. How do you see that balance between the graduates adapting to the company culture versus companies evolving their culture and practices to accommodate the graduate?
Mike, it's certainly an interesting topic to talk about. And I think it's something all of us have tried to solve throughout the years. And whether it's graduates or whether it's just new employees, it's always challenging, and how to balance that. And I think something that's really taught us to focus a bit more on the culture in our companies has been COVID, obviously. You know, it's influenced how we run our companies and what we do a lot. And from our company's perspective, we have gone fully remote. And therefore, it's been a challenge. We've had to implement things we've never had done before, and we had to change the way we do things. And so when it comes to a balance, I feel with any relationship, whether it's a company and graduates, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a friendship, a mentorship, or family, there's always compromise. There's always both parties have to play a role, and an active role, and both parties have a responsibility on their side to fulfill in order for that to work. And both have to give 100%. So in terms of graduates, how to balance that out, we see the memes on Instagram of what you thought it would be like and what it really is. And that is the truth. I think it is so valuable to have some sort of internship and to go into the field and see what it really is like, especially in the tech industry. People think you're going to play games all day long, or you're going to sit on Google chairs, and it's long hours and it's hard work and it's problem solving. And companies think, oh, we're going to get these graduates, they're full of energy, they're young, they can work for hours. They need a work-life balance as well. And so finding that balance is a fine line. But I think something we've been looking at since last year is we've been looking at our company culture, especially because we're remote. And we've been looking at what is fair. We've had long sessions of how do we implement that for our company. Now, obviously, for everyone it would be different because each company is a different type of industry. Graduates and what they've studied is different. How do we incorporate that? And then we've had people from different companies work for us, or different countries work for us. and how do we build a culture that is fair to everyone. And so you really need to sit and figure that out. And something we've done is we do our KPIs, but we do a lot of communication. And I think we probably will touch on that a little bit later, so I won't go into that right now. But that is one of the key things we would need to look at.
For the students in here that might not know what a KPI is, key performance indicator. It's how we in business judge you. Bandiswa, can I maybe come to you next? You know, you're someone with more advanced education. How do you perceive the importance of that cultural fit? You know, is that something that you look for when you're choosing an employer? And do you feel that companies, well, let's answer that one first, and then I'm going to come back to you with basically asking, do you feel companies need to adapt more to accommodate you?
I think, firstly, in general, we get confused between when speaking about culture in any space. When you look at someone who has now been a student in Stellenbosch for 4 years, we get confused with that difference between values and culture. And I think a lot of the time when people are going into a company, they look at the values of a company. You know, it's very easy for me to say, okay, our values are diversity and inclusion, unity. It's easy to just, you know, spit words around, for lack of a better word. But, you know, the culture of a company is really do the people in that company embody the values of the company, if that makes sense. So if you're saying your values, if I come to a company and I see, okay, their values are diversity, when I'm looking at the group of the people working in that company, do they actually embody diversity? Are they diverse? So to me, it's more about when I'm coming into a company or looking at a company, the thing that's really important to me is less about the cultural fit, because that's not something I can really see before entering the company. It's more about the values of the company, and am I seeing that in the interview? When they, you know, when I come into the interview and I'm being asked questions, is that the way I'm being asked the questions, the way my questions are being answered, is it in a way that actually embodies their values? And then with that, I see that, okay, this is a company that maybe I can get into, and I can, you know, be aligned with in that sense. But as someone in postgraduate, I mean, unfortunately, I am in South Africa, so it's difficult for me to be picky. You know, unfortunately, it is difficult for me to come and say, okay, you are liars. You don't embody diversity. No thanks. You know, it's not. Unfortunately, that's not really the reality of the situation. But I, you know, do hope that eventually I'll get to that space where I'm able to have that privilege of saying, okay, I have all these options. This is what's important to me. The cultural fit is important to me. Then in that case, to answer your question, that's when the cultural fit will be important in that sense, looking at the values of the company.
I think that's two exceptionally good points, and we do have to factor in the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. We can all be lofty with ideal beliefs and values of what we want to do, but when the market doesn't allow us to live that out, it's very tricky. Look, you make a fascinating point there, and it's something that we always look at when we're analyzing organizations, is what is written on the wall in terms of the values is very rarely the values that are lived in the organization. And it's really trying to understand those behaviors. So that's a great bit of advice for everyone as well there as to how you look at it. Thank you very much. Kanti, you're a student. This hasn't just scared you, has it? Like this, like now we've got the culture and getting those fits. So you're going to be looking for a job very soon. What are your expectations, you know, regarding company culture and values as you enter the workforce? You know, and maybe more importantly, how willing do you think you're going to be to adapting to maybe what the company culture is?
I definitely think, like Bandis has said, context is very important, right? So when we got like the topic for this panel discussion, I was like, oh, okay, let me do a bit of research. And then I went on and then I Googled, and I got the staggering stat that said like 90% of hiring failures is because the employees were not willing to adapt to the company culture. And I'm like, that's a shocking stat, like 90%. So 9 out of 10 people will not survive in a work environment because they don't fit into the company culture, like Bandisa said. And taking into consideration that I'm in South Africa and the market is already, it's so like it's fluctuated, right? I don't think it's technically up to me to choose whether or not I'm going to fit into a company or into this kind of work, because the market is so fluctuated, right? It's like you going into a new environment. Before you do that, it's basically up to me to research the environment that I'm going into. And I think that's one thing that we lack as students, right? We take only the theoretical part of what we're taught with our degrees and go in with that and not looking at like the sociological aspect of it. If you go into a new environment, like it's a whole new relationship that you're creating. So the more information that you have, the better. And I mean deep research, like Bandisa said. You know, the values that they do, how do they carry themselves as the company, the employees, the people you interacted with the moment you get into the building, what's like the atmosphere like, right? But also, like I said, we cannot really afford to be picky like that. You know, I think when company culture changes, there has to be like a big catalyst, like you said, like COVID-19. And most companies are more of like a reactive kind of thing. When something happens, that's when they're trying to change it. And as Gen Z, we are, well, we're fragile, we're called the snowflakes. So basically, even something minor might also kind of discourage us. But to answer that question, I'm definitely willing to adapt to company culture as long as it doesn't compromise my personal well-being, like you said. Yeah, hope I answered it.
Yeah, answered it brilliantly. Thank you very much. So maybe Rian Shah can come to you two now from academia, because we're talking about adapt. You went and did some research for this. If you were going to accompany the sort of things that you would look into, is that something that academia you feel is preparing the students for well enough? This adaptability, this need to understand how to analyze a company they're going into. Maybe Charles, I can give that question to you first.
Why do I get a difficult one? Mike, just off the cuff, I don't think, well, universities definitely are not preparing students yet. I think there's pockets of excellence in different kind of things, and I think because the reality is that universities still have quite theoretical degrees, and I mean, so we hear a lot of times, students go into industry and they come with a theoretical knowledge, but they don't have any practical skills that goes with that. And we certainly try, I mean, because I'm not sitting in academic department, so we, for example, in our center, we have a graduate career services unit that actually assists students through those processes, whether it's for interview skills, whether it is, we bring companies to the university to do those interviews. We just had a career fair last year where we had 90 companies on, at the university to engage with students already, so that students can have that. I think where we as universities still lacking is that, and it's, when people refer to soft skills, I think that is actually, but I call it these days, that's actually the hard skills to have. Because you need to have the agility, adaptability, critical thinking, communication skills, how to live in and work in a diverse team, and those are the kind of things that I think, and I think in some of our degree programs we've worked that into curriculum. For example, and I mean the new curriculum for medical doctors, it's been worked into those kind of things. But I do think one needs to do it core. Those should be the core skills within, and it shouldn't be extracurricular, because that's the other part. Because it's almost at universities, I think it should be student affairs that does that outside of the classroom as extracurricular, but it shouldn't be the case. I think the other thing that we at universities sit with, especially if we have residence spaces where students stay. That's actually where students learn how to live in a diverse environment, because I mean, suddenly your roommate is from a different culture and things, And that adaptability and what students learn, and I mean, I'm a resident head here at the university as well, and I get when I place students together from different backgrounds in one room, in the first couple of weeks, I can't stay with him because of our culture is different, and 3 months later, they take each other home for weekends. And it's those kind of things that I think is that makes the university a space where we can do that within the. But as I'm saying, I think it should be ingrained into curriculum for all students, not only in certain degree programs that we have.
Brilliant. Rian, did you want to take that? Because particularly because a lot of the stuff you do is online as well.
Well, yeah, we actually do quite a lot on campus as well. We've got 12 campuses across the country. But I think because we're a private higher education institution, the expectations is slightly different from us. And I think Gen Z is a beautiful generation. I get to deal with them every day. And they know exactly where they want to work. They've researched it, but they have a TikTok or YouTube perception of what that means. Okay? And then they walk into the real world. I think as universities, we have a responsibility to change the way that we teach people. So what we've done, for example, we've got a block system where you go and you only ever study a subject for the next 8 weeks. Okay. The feedback that we get from companies is your graduates come back and they know how to start stuff and get it finished within a short space of time. Okay. While at many public universities, I'm not here to knock public universities, you sign up for a year-long course. Okay, so you think you've got a long time to do things. Okay, so it actually goes back into structuring the way that we do the curriculum, that we do that. Something else that we do is that in every single module of every single course, you will interact with a company. Okay, why? Because that is when you walk into different workspaces and you see where you're going to work and you sit there and say, there was something in that space that I didn't like. Okay, so we actually take the student to the places. Okay, because when they come to the career fairs, they display their values. And I just loved what you said in terms of culture versus values. Yeah? So something that we've got the privilege, we're culture first organization, and we've built an Eduvos culture that we call the Vasi vibe, the Edu vibe, and we actually practice our values with our students. Okay, so show up with humanness. It's something that we do as students and as staff. So they're experiencing a lived culture. Okay, and I think that that's where we often actually fail. Okay, is that culture is not a theoretical concept. And when you actually walk into the workplace, it's not a theoretical concept, it is real. Because if you don't fit into the culture, you're one of those work failures. Okay, so you don't want to be a work failure. So you actually adopt your norms and standards according to what's happening here. And you might think that you'll get that ideal position one day where your culture is going to fit. It's not going to happen because you're going to either succeed in this environment by adapting to that. So I think we need to show students how to live a culture, okay, that is not necessarily their identity, their cultural identity, but a corporate culture that's successful. And maybe we have the benefit of being a private institution and being able to do that. Thank you.
I love what you said there. It reminds me of, we have this pathological need to belong, right, as human beings. My son might go to school for one of those fancy dress-up days, and he goes as Batman. He gets there, all his mates are Spider-Man. What's he want to do next day? He's going to come as Spider-Man. So we do start to form into that culture. Coming back to you, our postgrad, Vandiswa. Have you experienced any or encountered any situations, where that company culture was a significant barrier to your success or your integration?
Luckily not. I think I've been very privileged enough to work in spaces where and I think this now answers the main question, in my opinion, is where both parties, myself and the company, were open to adapting. So open to adapting to the fact that I am, of course, younger. I've just gotten into the workspace. I'm inexperienced in terms of, you know, working in that sense. And on top of that, I'm still a student. So I've been very lucky enough to work in spaces where they were, both parties were willing to adapt to the situation. Yeah, but if, you know, I think the main issue that then happens with those barriers is it's not the culture itself that's the issue, it's the inability of the company to be willing to adapt to the fact that you don't embody that cultural fit in the beginning. So if someone, you know, a Gen Z comes into a company and they are someone who is who doesn't value, I keep using diversity, but who doesn't value diversity, and they come into the company and they don't necessarily value that, it's not a matter of initially adapt or you're gone. No, it's this is how we work into the company, this is how we do things, a sense of teaching. And I think that's what then becomes a barrier, is the fact that both parties are unwilling to work past the differences between both parties in that sense. So I think for me, the reason why I haven't experienced those barriers is not because I've gone into a company where the culture was exactly what I needed. No, it's because I've gone into a company where they were willing to teach me about the culture, and where I also, as the graduate, was willing to learn about how the company works and how I can fit into that company. So, yes.
Brilliant, brilliant. And look, it also depends a lot on the company and being able to have that dialogue, being able to have that time. I know with a lot of organizations, they are so focused on get the work done that the soft skills that you say are lacking from graduates, they're actually lacking even more so within organizations. And I think that's the big part of the challenge.
I also just want to add with that, I think it's the excuse from most companies, oh, we don't have time, we have deadlines to meet, whatever. It's not a job, you know, it's not an extra job to teach someone something. It's not like you're going to have to add to your job description to say, oh no, this is how we do it. I mean, it's not even about being a helicopter. I think Kanti and I were talking about this. It's not about being a helicopter boss for you to be able to teach a graduate something. It's actually about you embodying exactly that, living in it. You know, if you are a company that says you value unity, show that in the way that you do things. And if your graduate isn't part of that, then me as a graduate, I'll say, this company, you know, unity is really valued, and I don't fit into that. How do I then fit and eventually live out into that? I think as soon as you embody something and as soon as you live out in something, people end up seeing that it's either I adapt or, you know, I'm out, you know. And I think a lot of the time companies are forceful with, as we've been saying, with their values. And the actual people who work in the company aren't embodying those values, so it feels forceful to teach someone else values that you yourself don't necessarily 100% live in and believe. Yeah.
And to be honest, in most organizations, particularly larger corporate spaces, there isn't one culture. There are lots of different cultures that can live within a particular organization. If they don't have, or they aren't putting it to the forefront to actually try and live out the cultures that they profess to have, you'll get these microcosms throughout, which it makes it even more complex when trying to fit in. You might fit in here, but you don't fit in there. Sonika, maybe I can come back to the business, because we've just said a lot of it relies on you to sort this out. No pressure, right? But maybe you can enlighten us as to, in your experience, what are those, we've spoken about the things we need to be educated on, what are those skills gaps that you're seeing, that you're experiencing, that you notice in recent graduates?
Okay. So what we've seen is, coming from a tech side, is so we build systems, right? And people have been taught how to do all these things, how to write code. But do they know how to solve a problem? Do they know critical thinking? And so do they know how to debug? And we've had people that even older than graduates, even they've had a career for a while, they've joined us, and then when there's a problem, they don't know how to debug something. And it's simple, because as you just don't think about it. And so what we've done is we've started pair programming with when we have new employees or interns, and we pair them with someone, and they learn from each other. So you pair them with someone that has had some experience and that we know, you know, we trust to show them the ropes. And then we do regular check-ins with them, and we do expectations. So we tell them what our expectations are, we ask them what their expectations are, and then our HR will have regular meetings with them and say, well, let's have a look. These were your expectations. How are we doing? These are our expectations. How are we doing? Something else we found was communication, which in any industry, in any relationship, is always a thing. And being a remote company, even more so, you don't see the people. You don't know they've gotten up and gone to make a cup of tea. You don't know, you see tasks moving, but not everyone has a list of tasks and you know what they're doing to know that you are going to have a result or you know, the task delivered what you need by the end of today. So communication's been a big thing where we've learned that we need to over communicate, and we've learned that even though we speak different languages, so we keep to English in the company because everybody can understand that, and even though we all speak English, we still don't always understand what the other person means. So sometimes what we would do is we would repeat and say, well, this is what I'm understanding what you're saying, and this is what I'm going to implement. Is this correct? Am I meeting your expectations? So we've actually brought it down to that level, and it seems silly, but you see the difference.
Doesn't seem silly to me. I'm actually now thinking that I should potentially be doing that with my wife. When she says no one's emptied the bin this morning, what she's really saying is, Mike, get off your backside, go empty the bin. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, expectations. Manage them. I've learned something. Kanti, I'm going to come to you. I mean, we've spoken there about some of the skills. Do you feel in your university life now that you've been given enough of those skills, that you've been given the opportunity to sort of fit in when you arrive? Are they doing enough, the universities, for you? Are they preparing you enough for that, adapting to a company culture?
I'm a genuine believer in me doing the things other than the next person doing the things, right? So I genuinely believe it should be intrinsic. If I get to a new environment and I think this is happening, I need to find out why this is happening. If there's something going on, it's up to me to put myself in those kind of spaces, because we've seen it around campus, we've seen it in class. Most people come to class to get the content and just go back to res and like, I'm not gonna do this, like I didn't come here for this, I came here for the degree, right? Forgetting that some of the skills that you get with like your society meetings, like interacting with the lecture. Have you seen how weird it is in class when a lecturer asks a question and nobody's willing to like just raise up their hand? You know, it's those kind of things. I feel like everything should be from intrinsic. Like you put yourself in those kind of spaces where you're gonna learn about other people's cultures. You're gonna learn how to fit into a certain environment, right? So I genuinely think it's definitely up to the students, right? Put yourself in those kind of spaces where you're going to grow, because if not, you're literally just going to grow academic wise, but as a person, your interpersonal skills will not grow at all. And I think that's the key thing that companies are looking for. And we have this tendency of just putting it on our resume. Oh, I have interpersonal skills. Oh, I have adaptability skills. Oh, I have communication skills. But when it's time for you to like put those things into practice, you don't necessarily know how to, because you, through your 3-year degree, you didn't put yourself in that space where you have to like employ or get those skills. So, yeah.
And the AI bot that pulled out your CV for you didn't teach you what interpersonal skills was.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm with you. Rihan and Shashal, again, to both of you. You know, we've spoken about some of the stuff in the way in which you're preparing the students, and also the lack that you feel in terms of that preparation. How much work are you doing, or do you feel needs to be done with the companies themselves in terms of closer collaboration to help them understand what's required from universities? Oh, sorry, from the students and them.
I think there's a lot that one can do there, and I'll give you an example of it, because as you were asking that question, at the previous university, I was coordinating the psychology master's program. And students, and remember we select students, and you only select 10, and you have more than 200 people applying. And what we did with that program is we made sure where the students will do their internships, those people sit on the panels when we do the selection. And it is about, and then the back and forth feedback to say, so we're training this student, what is it that you require when the student comes to you? And because it's that feedback that that has to happen definitely more often, and I think in all courses almost, that to look at how is it possible to do that, but also I cannot understand why we're not bringing people in industry into giving guest lectures, for example, more often. Where it is about, because because what I find a lot of times is that, and certainly in public universities, is that you have academic, that's been an academic for 20 years, but has been in the industry 20 years ago. You know, so what is it that we then also teach students in terms of those? So for me, those are the kind of things that becomes quite important. Then just a second point I want to make is that we keep on saying the company and what is the company? It's not company, it's people. And I've certainly found, I mean, I've worked in different companies and industries as well, is that, you know, and especially in your larger companies, for example, I mean, I was in SAPS and even here at Stellenbosch University, is that who sets the pace for culture is actually line managers and middle management. And we're not doing enough in companies to ensure that we instill that in especially middle management in terms of how to deal with people, because and it's that relationship building stuff that I'm talking about. Because I see how people struggle, and if I look at most of the people that I work with in companies that sit on the couch across me, with depression and anxiety stuff is industry related. It's not personal stuff that I'm going through and therefore I'm now depressed or anxious or whatever. It's actually, and then you take it back and it's all about relationships and what is playing out in that. So I do think there's a lot that one has to do in terms of that. So I do, I mean, on the question earlier, I think the adaptability has to come from both. Because I think we have a student that comes out these days and say, hey, I don't want to work 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, whatever the hours. I never know what the hours are. I don't want to work like that anymore. I want to have flexible working hours and whatever. And after COVID, what is all the major companies that did it? I mean, they all came back and said, hey, back at your desk. But we forgot about the gains that we made during that period, and how do we make sure that that is, because that flexibility, because it also speaks to the work-life balance and kind of things. I mean, I've just introduced a 4-day work week with my staff, and for the last 6 months we've been doing it, and it's phenomenal what I've seen in terms of just that the kind of growth it would, or the around stuff around staff wellness, but also the culture within the center completely changed simply by doing this. And I mean, I'm in middle management at university, so there's certain things that you can do, and I think it's those kind of things. So it's you know, so yeah.
Brilliant. Rian.
Cool. I'm not sure what the question is, but I'm going to answer anyway. I think we have to realize that the student leaving the university is a co-author of the culture. Okay. So we need to ask the question, how do we teach them how to use this pen? Okay. And I think that that's a very, very important aspect. And I think we talk about soft skills, but I think it's also important to ask, what's the softest skill? And it's really to understand, why are you doing this? When you are going into the workplace as an intern or as a new employee, what is the expectation that you've got versus what the company got? We talked about that, but also, how can I equip you to be a co-author in this process? Okay. And I think when we work with companies, we find that they're quite curious, actually. They don't understand the new generation. Gen Z for them is a little bit of a mystery and a bit of a shock, because, yeah, they know everything but nothing. You know, that's sort of like...
You said that. I didn't say. I'm just putting it out there before.
They're trying to Google it, you know, as we speak now. Sorry. Do we know everything? um, okay, and as well, so we have to realize that there is a bit of a shock to the system here. But actually, most organizations are quite willing to engage in it. And I agree, a lot of organizations have spent a lot of time on culture recently. For us, it's probably our biggest priority in our organizations right now. And I hear what you're saying about kind of subcultures of employment, which traditionally has been a very, very bad thing. But I think for a lot of organizations now, it's a source of strength. They're actually seeking it out. They're looking for those different cultures. They want to bring the different energy, etc. And most of the time actually ends up in coordination. Last point that I want to make. I think, Kanti, what you've said is very brave because it's a very solitary view. I need to go out there and adapt. And I think that that's where we're also making a massive mistake. Okay? So something that we do at private universities, once again, is you've got a learning coach or a student advisor that works with you all the time. Okay? So you realize very soon that you're not alone in this. Okay? So when you go out into the real world, the first thing that you ask, where's my student advisor here? Okay. Because if I don't have that, I realize I cannot be that single source of bastion of my values versus the world. Yeah? And I think we need to equip our students to understand that there is a lot of support in organizations. Okay? Most organizations aren't heartless, soulless places where people walk in and try to destroy your values. Okay? They actually want something from you. Okay? They tend to want to pay for it, and you tend to need to want to do it. Okay? If we can get those kind of basics sorted out, we tend to kind of have a working relationship that works. Okay? What's going to make you stay, though, is the company culture. Okay? Because you want to buy into a place where you can see your future. And if I can't see my future, and we find that with Gen Z, with her, and she came up to me and said, I don't want a job. It's like, well, why are you talking to me? This is a job interview. It's like, no. I want to live my purpose. It's like, okay, intriguing. Okay, it's the first time I heard that. Okay, so I asked, what does that mean? And she says, well, how does what I'm going to do relate to the SDGs? It's like, whoa, okay, that's real. Okay, that is this generation. They do want to feel that they're contributing, making a change, and making a difference. So I had to relate back my corporate culture, my understanding of what we're doing here, back to that person's reality, which was very real, because I needed her skill. She needed to feel that she's making this contribution and that she's going to live that on a daily basis, because otherwise, 3 months from now, I'm going to have to hire another person. Okay? And until we can make that connection as the employer versus the student coming in with all this skill, all this knowledge, all this attitude, we're not going to make the connections that we need to.
You talk quite highly of, I think, current companies trying to understand culture and to move forward. I will, I think, argue with you in terms of how well they're doing on that at the moment. We, certainly in my experience, and we have a community of about 200 HR professionals that we speak to regularly in South Africa. I think there's some in the audience there. I don't know, that's where you're all supposed to go, woo. No, yeah, okay, yay, there's 3 people, okay. And the feedback we get from them is, unfortunately, because of, they still, however much they want to change and bring some of those more, what I'd say, more modern values, more modern ways of working into place, they have such issues with the systems, the processes, the legacy that exists. Even going back 2 industrial revolutions ago, where you were talking about exchange of what does the student give me, they're a pair of hands for me, what can they do? Thinking about the organization as physical assets and generating something, as opposed to the social capital and the knowledge sharing. So I'm not sure, I think organizations still have a long way to go. And I would love to see, and it's great to hear that you're having conversations with them, but I would love to see more conversations happening between academia and companies, because they're both looking for the same thing.
I want to respond to that. Maybe you should stop hanging out with HR professionals. And I'm actually being quite serious about that because culture is not an HR issue. Okay, it's a core business issue. It is the primary issue. Okay, so I tend to find that HR is actually quite often a big stumbling block in building culture. And I'll go on record here for anybody that wants to do
I think everyone would agree with you.
It's to say that we practice HR as a compliance in South Africa, and not as the strategic discipline that it needs to be. And my question to any one of those organizations that will have that issue is to sit and say, what's your organizational design? What is your plan? What are you doing here? Why are you employing this next person? Because if you don't understand that, you're not going to build a culture that's a growth culture, and that's what we need. So we grow 38% year on year, and our biggest investment is in our culture.
100%. Look, I agree with you 100% on HR. I mean, the fact that, but therein lies the problem, right? Because when organizations go forward with a culture initiative, looking at the values, looking at how they take that through to behaviors, who's the person they give it to? Rightly or wrongly, the majority of them give it to HR because it has the people thing, even though they are the administrative, they're basically an administrative function, like you say in South Africa. So therein lies the problem. So I think we're talking about the same thing. We've got half an hour, just under half an hour left, so I do want to give the audience an opportunity to ask some questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, one at there we go. Okay, let's come. Lady at the back was the first one. Let me come up with the mic here. There we go. Get my steps in.
What's your name, please? Yeah, the one next to you. Yeah. Kanzi. Yeah, thank you for advocating for the students, first of all. What you just said was really amazing, and it really it just got my attention. I actually experienced it last year when I came into uni. And I feel like you have a point, but at some point, I feel like the university is also missing out, whereas we don't have access to like events like these. Well, they come on campuses, but we don't know they actually are here. Like if you look around in this room, how many are actually students? Because I like see a lot of staff members. Hi. Also, you see, so last year I struggled a lot, but thankful to Instagram and whoever invented it, I actually managed to follow a lot of clusters, the alma maters, so actually like get info outside the lecture rooms, like you explained, because there's so much to gain outside the lecture rooms, and that is what we should actually aim for during our degrees. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Magic, thank you very much. The gentleman here with the blue jacket and the white, just in the, normally you can say in the fourth row, but the colors just throw you out in these seats.
Yeah, even though you're in the light, it's difficult to see who you're looking at. But I realized I'm the only one with the blue jacket, yeah. I won't stand because then everybody can't see. I think my question is just in general. I think, look, hearing the discussion, there's obviously still this leeway between what do you give and what are they as graduates or any employee then looking for in a culture. And, in some way, I don't know if I should use this as an example, but if you think about what happened with Tesla and Elon Musk and how they have a very specific culture, and you have people adapt to that, people that want to have a specific drive and ambition, but then there's also a line between when it's humanly wrong and when it's just in that level. So my question is more, as a company, we want to adapt. We want to have the best environment for people to flourish, to gain experience, to grow. But the company needs to be profitable. So now there's this whole leeway between working extra hours, making money, providing more, but it's like, obviously everybody wants everything. So I want flexibility, I want a higher pay, and I want to work within these hours, and you should allow me to go to a sports event when my children are there. And then when is it allowable and when is it not? So there's sick leave and there's all these different structures for the company. But it's almost understanding what the core, because there's going to be a give from both sides. But what is the core in Gen Z then, if I may ask? Because I think, being a millennial and understanding a lot of that and from other generations, is difficult to understand what the true need is on the Gen Z side, and now with the new culture, what really drives them to understand how to get the best out of them for both parties to be happy, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So the interesting thing is, I think for a lot of businesses, they assume that they're not going to get that value. Okay. We've been trained. Okay. If the person isn't there from 8 to 5, okay, and 2 minutes past 8, somebody goes and takes the presence list, okay, and delivers to the CEO's desk. That's very clear, like, these are the offenders for today. Yeah, okay. Business doesn't work like that anymore, okay? It shouldn't. And if it is, you're not running a culture, you're running a prison, yeah? Okay. People actually want to feel that they can go and take care of their kids, etc. But be clear on what you expect from them as outputs. And Gen Z is very good with that. As long as you tell them where to go, okay, they'll get there, but don't tell them how to get there, okay? Because they've already worked it out, okay? Or they've got Google or ChatGPT or somebody else to tell, or they'll Insta each other and like, oh, hell, I don't know how to do this, and then somebody's going to help them through it, okay? So don't make assumptions on what people can achieve. Set the challenge and the bar for them to achieve, and then hold them accountable for it. You'll be amazed what you get out of people, and then you live your culture.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I think Ganti and I were literally just talking about this before the session started, about the fact that me, and I thought it was actually just me and my personality, but clearly it's a Gen Z thing, is me, I don't want someone who's here all the time. I think it's the sense of, and I've noticed it as well with just, any generation that is older than me, is the sense of, you think people can't think for themselves. And I think that's the main issue that comes in with that, is this idea of, because I have less experience, or because I am working under you, I have some sort of lower way of thinking. Whereas it's like, no, we all are here, we all were hired, we all deserve to be here, so let's be treated as such. And I think, really, to answer your question of what do Gen Z want, I think it's just to be respected and understood. I personally don't see myself coming into a company and expecting to work, 10 hours a week or whatever. Something that's unrealistic. I don't know if that's, I don't know. But, yeah. It's like okay, thank you. An unrealistic number. I wouldn't expect that. I think companies have this expectation of, oh, you're just kids, you don't understand the way the real world, teach me how that works. But as you said, give me the freedom to also figure it out as time goes by, with your guidance, not with your iron fist that you are ruling with. So it really is, as I said, a mutual way of working, and also just a mutual respect with that.
I genuinely think I agree with the both of you. But right now my mind is stuck in how much we're of a capitalist world, right? How sales are important, like you said, how profit is important. And there's some industries where you need to be in like a 9 to 5. Like, that's a given. Like, whether we want to change it or not, that's exactly how they get the best output that they can get, right? So, like, I'm going to go back to what I said, that it's very important to then do research before you go into a certain field, right? Because more than anything, I think I'm speaking for myself and I'm speaking for everybody. You are valued when your work is recognized, and that's just about it. For Gen Zs, they're valued when their work is recognized. If I do something and I present it to my supervisor or my manager and they're happy with it, that's when I feel like I belong, right? And that's just about it. It doesn't matter like the kind of industry that you're in, right? Culture changes, culture evolves. We are evolving as human beings, but there's some things that are always going to be stagnant, right? If it's a manufacturing line, it's going to be a manufacturing line, and this is how things are supposed to happen. You cannot say, oh, at 1 o'clock I'm going to take a break and then we're going to stop producing like cars or whatever. That's how the industry is, and that's how it works. So I feel like it's important to do research into the kind of industry you're going into or the kind of company you're going into, so that you can see whether you're going to adapt or not, whether you fit into it or not, right? Don't set unrealistic expectations for yourself and say, okay, maybe I might not. You get in, you see, you do. It's like, I picture it as if you are going into like you're looking for a house, right? You're looking at different neighborhoods, different properties. You're gonna research what's the crime rate, what is this, how do the neighbors interact with each other. If it's something that's a you thing, you feel like you cannot tolerate, then you're not gonna go into. But if it's something that, if it's an estate and everybody's complaining about, it's up to the management to then change it. That's basically how I view everything. But ultimately, Gen Z is valued, they feel like they belong where their work is valued. If I put something and everybody's happy with the output, I'm definitely going to feel like I belong, and it's going to motivate me to work even more.
I just want to give a practical example of the question, because when I started the 4-day work week with staff, so I've got staff that's recently graduated, and I've got a few that's retiring next year, right? So, and everything in between. So all of them didn't believe the 4-day work week because I was saying 100% output, because we were looking at output with 80% of time that we work. And you know what? The output increased actually with a day less of work, because people became much more productive, and how they use their time. They were much more focused. All my one-on-one meetings with my managers that I have, normally an hour, last now half an hour only. Because they come in, they focus, they say, this is what we want to talk about. An actual fact, students coming for therapy. Now I told you only have 4 sessions. And you know what? Normally it took them 4 sessions to get to what the issue is. Now they get it to it in the first session. So it's those kind of things. So turnaround for students. Our waiting list used to be for students to see a psychologist was 3 months. Now we don't have a waiting list at all.
You're churning them out now.
Yeah, you know, so that's the thing. And even on sick leave, March last year we had 52 sick days in the center. March this year was 6 days. And so it's fundamental. But it took me a year to get the staff ready to implement the 4-day work week. Because it's also about, it's not a right, it's a privilege. So if you get the output in 4 days, then you get a wellness day. And it's those kind of things, because we always think, because we think about time spent and that equates to output. It's actually not. It's actually, and I'm one of the managers who say, if you are done by 12 o'clock, what are you still doing there? Why are you not going home? And it is, and I've seen that it actually works to give that kind of flexibility, and the onus and responsibility is then on the staff member, because at the end of the month, we must still have the outputs.
That's it, but that's not a Gen Z thing, right? No. That, like, the 2 things that you've mentioned, is this is what the Gen Z want. We want to, give us the direction, tell us what the output is that you want, we'll figure out how we get there, and we want our work valued. That's every employee that I've ever met. Yeah. You're the ones now fighting for that, 100%. Yeah. Where were you 30 years ago when I started my bloody career? Okay. Yes, David.
I have a request and I have a comment. My request is, Bandiswa, clear your desk for the 24th of October. And what you and I are going to do together is we are going to share my speaking slot, and I'm being absolutely serious, at the Learning and Development Conference. Because I have been asked... to speak on these matters. And while I've been sitting here, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you to all 6 of you. And it occurred to me, and I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that, is that it would be completely disingenuous to speak to the topic of Gen Z and the workplace, etc., as through, regardless of how much research I do, through the lens and the worldview of a Gen X person. So if you would oblige, you join me and we will have this conversation with the very interesting group of people, all from learning and development and corporations across the land, and I think we'll have some fun.
I can help you negotiate your fee.
Don't speak to Mike. The
You had a
second
question as well.
It's a comment. And what I'm struck by is that we are looking for the simplest way to crack this code. It's not a code that we can crack. And the whole time I've been sitting here thinking of something that my mentor said to me whenever we're building something new or we're grappling with something new. And he said, don't do what is convenient, do what is necessary. And so, to conclude, for all of us, whether we Gen Z, Gen X, booming, alphaing, whatever the hell we are, whatever our story is, whatever our degrees of belonging are, it's not just about us and what we want, it's about our participation in the context, because we haven't spoken about context. The context is the frickin' holy grail, because that is the primary influence of what we do and what we don't do and what's appropriate. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, the lady with, I think, the best coat in here. I saw your coat when you came in and I was like, that is such a cool coat.
Thank you. I want to just get back to the point that the gentleman there made. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. About the fact that universities don't bring enough people from business to come and do lectures. For instance, even the Research and Innovation Center is run by an academic, a DVC of that. And I felt when I was at UWC those years, and I brought it up because we were sitting on the panel to put a person in that job. And the person from business, they weren't interested in. And I feel that that's where we err a lot. Of our 26 universities, there are a few that are Technikon universities. Technikon universities has work-integrated learning. Universities like Stellenbosch are theoretical academic institutions. They don't do that. There should be more of that. There cannot be a graduate with a degree not having a job. The idea of graduate attributes is that you learn and you get these skills and you must either go find a job or make a job. That's what the degree entitles you to. So my question is, why are we not using more business people to come and speak to graduates? Also, when it comes to the Gen Z, I have a bit of a different experience with that you say that Gen Zs give them their job and they will just do it. When you look at being in the lecturing space, the younger Gen Zs that we bring in, you know how the academia is templated. You get a template here, this is what you must come do. It's not true that they run with it. Because Gen Zs that I find in the academic space want shortcuts. Because some jobs has longer routes to get to the end result. But they are quick and easy. That's what Gen Zs want. So there's a balance that needs to be created, because it's not true that they all can just run with it if you give them the job. That has not been my experience. So my thing is that we need more integration with business. Like your caption asked there, who must adapt? I think universities needs to adapt more to the company culture.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I don't know, there's a question, there was a question sort of in there. I suppose, do you agree with that or don't you agree with that?
I absolutely agree that they must integrate more. I mean, that's why I made that point, that it is about, and I'm of the point where I say, at some point, I actually was with some training with quite a lot of professors, and I was saying to them, you know, we in the business of giving degrees, that's really what we want, but will we still be relevant in the next 10 years? And if we don't actually adapt in terms of how it's, because, but then I have a whole issue with our whole education system, from basic education right up to higher education.
We've got 5 minutes left. Do you want to solve it?
It's a whole fundamental, you know, revamp to look at those kind of things, because also some of our Gen Z students coming in is not prepared to be at university because of what happens in basic education. But I absolutely agree. We really have to get that balance right.
I have the privilege of working in a private university, so we have two mindsets that really work for us. So every single degree has work integrated learning. Okay, it just has to be there. It's not optional. Okay, because if we don't do that, then people don't experience the workplace, etc. So you're on a good path. Just keep going. Okay, but it's going to take a lot for the public universities to do so. The other thing is, people that have issues with the basic education system in the higher education system, in my opinion, is making a fundamental mistake, because we cannot assume what will come out of any school. I can tell you it is widely varying. But while they're in our care, we have a duty to deliver something at the end of the day. I have real issues with the graduate attributes. That theoretical framework has never been proven. Okay, there is no proof that it actually works. This is an individual, that's an individual, this is an individual. There is no way to make them the same individual. So let's abandon the idea of graduate attributes, because it doesn't work, okay? And let's start focusing on, how do I get you to unlock your potential? Okay, what's your barriers? What's the shifts that you need to make in your life? How can I create an environment in which you can, in a structured way, go through that and become a holistic person, not just a scientist? So what we currently do is we do a little bit like Harry Potter. We put a sorting hat on and we say, like, oh, you slightly technical, work with your hands, definitely engineering. Okay. Oh, you like fighting. Ooh, you must go into law. Okay. You know, oh, you're so creative. Oh, the arts is for you. Okay. And that's what we do. And that's all that universities are currently doing. They're actually just providing a little bit of a sorting hat, grouping people, and then letting them sort each other out. Okay. I think we need to fundamentally think about what we're doing here as institutions in terms of creating holistic people, okay? And that means that there's a lot of things that we're not doing, okay? Because it's definitely not about research outputs, and it's definitely not about understanding the latest theories of some guy somewhere. It's about that individual going through a structured process to uncover themselves, and I think that that's where many, many universities go wrong.
I think that's a fantastic point. And interestingly, from a business perspective, I think that's where a lot of businesses are going wrong in terms of accepting the whole person that comes to the workplace. You know, the job descriptions that we give them, we pigeonhole them. This is what you will do. This is what you will achieve. And that's 10% of the person. There's 90% of the person we never even see in the workplace. And if we can unlock that as well, then we're going to see some powerful things happening.
And also with the point that you made, very, very true. I think Ganti can also agree that Gen Z, it must be quick. Like if I'm doing something, it must be, you know, fast results. Very true. But I do think that the point that was being made with regards to Gen Z being able to get to an output is more as, I'm going to get to where you need me to get to. Maybe it might just be in a different way of how you need me to get there. And I think maybe that's the imbalance or sort of the confusion between the different generations is, I need you to get to this in this way, whereas I'm saying, you telling me to get to Roman's Pizza, I can run there, I can walk there, I can fly there, I'm getting to romance. That's the main point. Whereas you are saying walk to romance, if that makes sense. And I think also the other issue is and I think this conversation has shown that, is that we see, and Mike, you also mentioned it, is that we see ourselves of Gen X versus at the end of the day, a lot of the things that we've mentioned that Gen Z want or that Gen Z value are things that people value in general. Any sort of generation, we all value the same things. Want to have a sense of belonging, we want to be understood, we want the same things. It's just that different generations have found different ways to get to that thing. And I think as soon as both parties, companies, universities, graduates, all the parties that are involved see it as that, as we all want the same thing, we all want to get to the same place, we'll be so much further because we all have the same goal then. The issue now is we think we have different goals, whereas it's not the case at all. We all have the exact same goal. So, yeah.
I feel like that's the summary we should end there. That was amazing. Thank you. Did you want to say something? Yeah, go for it, Kanti.
I think this is going to be my last point. I think I've been thinking about what you said when you had like a lady you were interviewing this lady, and then she asked, how does this apply to like the SDG? Because I'm very passionate about it, and I'm thinking about how many companies or interviewers would just like, you don't want the job, and that's the kind of culture that is currently going on, right? Myself as an undergrad final year, I wouldn't have the guts to ask the person who's interviewing me, how do I then fit into everything? Because I'm the one who's looking for the job, right? So I think there is also that thing in the market that we need to fix in terms of the students and also like the people who are like the employers as well. And that's a conversation that definitely has to be had, because ultimately I also want to apply the skills. So you need to tell me, how do I best then fit into that? So yeah.
Brilliant. Yep.
So if I can just say, we sometimes forget that being adaptable means we're teachable. And that means that the CEO that's near retirement had to start when they were 21, 23. They had to start and they knew nothing. And we need to remember that even though people do things differently and they have different experiences, I can always learn from them. I can tell you I've learned from people that I never expected to learn something from, that are way older and way younger, more experienced and less experienced. And if I can give one advice to graduates, is when you are in that interview, you've done your research, I love that, and you've read the job description. Always remember to ask the person doing the interview, ask them, what do you see, or how do you see my day-to-day role playing out? What do you see me actually doing every day? And they need to break it down for you. And it's a very important part, because what they say your job description is, what they say their culture is, and what they do could be completely different. And that's a very good way of knowing if that is the kind of thing that you can envision yourself doing.
Brilliant. Thank you. Wow. This has been, my mind is blown today. I think the highlight for me was realizing that we're all the same, but you guys have been suddenly fighting for us. That for me is just like, I'm going to go home and reflect on that. I owe you. I feel like I need to give you jobs. I need to pay money. This realization now. Wow. Bring on the Gen Z. That's all I'm going to employ now. And on that note, we have reached our time. So I just want to say thank you very much to our panel. Fantastic. Thank you again to GradLink for organizing this. But most importantly, thank you to all of you in the audience and online for taking your time out to engage, to listen, to learn, to be part of the conversation. Thank you very much.